Welcome to your Daily 5 for Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. If you remember when I last talked about the upcoming, at the time, Star Trek Picard Season 3, I had said that I was not going to watch it based on the fact that I had watched Season 1 and found it to be pretty terrible, and then watched Season 2 and didn't even make it to the end because it was equally terrible. I actually don't know which one was worse, but I basically swore it off at that point and said even the fact that they're bringing back almost the entirety of the Next Generation cast, that felt like a marketing stunt to me, and I just wasn't going to get into it. I wasn't going to buy into it. And so I did not have any intention of watching it. And then when the show came out, the reviews started to come in, and they seemed like they were generally good to great in many cases. And then the thing that really got my interest, or at least made me start to consider changing my mind, was when the Red Letter Media guys, who have been, far as I know, against almost the entirety of anything that's new Trek at all, any of the new stuff, even they had started to soften on Picard Season 3 and said that it started to feel a little bit like the old Next Gen stuff. So I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and try this thing out. Because it's at this point, there's 6 episodes out as of this recording. And so I figured, okay, and I'm going to not watch... I watched the block of 6. And I have to say, so just so there's no confusion about it, it's a lot better than I could have possibly anticipated. I mean, it is probably, I cannot at this point, maybe by the Friday show I will have come up with, but I cannot think of another show where the level of turnaround has been this staggering. Because honestly, I would say that Picard Season 1 and 2 are probably the worst Trek I've ever watched. Honestly, in terms of just quality, not only quality in themselves, but in relation to what came before. I would watch anything else in Star Trek before I would watch Picard again. In fact, I wouldn't watch Picard again, but if there was an option to watch that or something else, I cannot think of anything else, including the 5th movie, which I actually don't think is that bad, even in its worst parts. Even the worst parts of Star Trek V, the movie, are not as bad as Star Trek Picard, a show that on its own was awful, and in the context of the show that came before it was even worse. So for that show to now have turned it around to the point where I would call it my second favorite thing of the new Trek stuff, I would actually put it ahead of, I don't know, it would at least be tied with Star Trek Discovery Season 2 where Pike came in. It's not better than Strange New Worlds. I think Strange New Worlds still remains the high watermark of Trek, but to have those first 2 awful, awful seasons and now go into a third one and have it be this good. And I'm sure that some of why I'm liking the third season is because the first 2 were so bad that it's pushing up the quality of 3 as opposed to it existing in a vacuum. Although even in a vacuum, I think it probably would still be very entertaining and I like a lot of what it's doing. But again, the biggest thing is I was dead set on never seeing Picard Season 3. And then based on the reviews that I had seen, I went ahead and gave it a try, and I wasn't sure I was going to make it past the first 2 episodes. And I really just could not get enough of it. So we'll see how it sticks to landing. At this point, I'm not going to watch it again until the season is over, I don't think, because I want to see how they resolve it. But even in that first 6 episodes, because at one point, I think one of the RLM guys said that you could almost consider the first 4 episodes to be a movie. And I completely agree. It really is. It feels like that at least the beginning of this show is one of the better Next Generation movies that we never got. It's really stunning. It really is. And I mean, just about every aspect works far better than you would expect it to, given what came before. It really has to be contextualized that way. But even on its own, to be completely objective, I think even if this had been the only Picard season, outside of some little things that mention the first 2 seasons, but they barely even touch that. They really don't feel like they want to remind anybody there were 2 seasons before this. Even in a vacuum, I still think it would work fairly well. Well enough that people would think it was worth making. Let's put it like that. Where you could really not say that about the first 2 seasons. At least in my opinion, those first 2 seasons are so bad that they would even make the Enterprise decontamination gel sequences seem like maybe they were worth it. And even those are really awful to watch as well. I mean, even when I'm telling you the Enterprise is better than Picard seasons 1 and 2, that's saying something. So if you've been watching, I'd be curious what your response is, especially if you don't like the first 2 seasons, and I'll report back once it's done. But so far, Picard season 3 is working pretty well for me. Later.